You're welcome to today's class. Now, we have successfully done the Python installation, and then we've also installed the PyCharm, which is the IDE that we are going to use to interact with the Python world. Now, if you had any challenges in installing your own, you can reach me through the comment box, and then I have my email there too. You can also communicate with me. Maybe I can connect and help, or I can actually guide you on how you're going to complete your own installation. But if you have successfully done it, then let's go further. Now, I told you that we are living in a multiverse. The things that you will write, your source code, where would they be? When you write your source code, that source code cannot run on the computer system because the computer does not understand that language. Now, there has to be somebody who is going to take that language, look at the syntax. If everything is fine, interpret it to the machine language that is going to now run on your hardware. That you have to understand. So Python has what we call Python interpreter, and that is what we want to look at today. So I'm just going to use a little code to demonstrate to you how Python interpreter does this job. Now, looking at this Python interpreter, when you run your Python program, the Python interpreter comes into play. The interpreter is an executable program responsible for executing your Python code line by line. Unlike a compiler will you write the complete code and then compiler will compile it. If there is any error, it will not be compiled. But for interpreter, you write all your code. The interpreter is going to interpret your code line by line. If the first line does not have any error, it will execute it. If it sees error in the second line, then it will now tell you, but it will have done the execution of the first line. That is the difference. So for this Python interpreter, now I gave you this, looking at this diagram, you have your source code. So this is the program that you have written using the Python language. So following the syntax, we have done this. Now the interpreter job is to look at this, your syntax, and be sure that everything is accurate. Once that is okay, the interpreter will interpret this your code and then change it to the processes that the operating system will now work with your processor and your memory, and everything will now work well and an output to be shown on your screen. I told you that your screen is like this world that we are in. You are it is just as you have your own world, you have yourself in your body. That is also how the software is inside this hardware. Now, when you write a code, the Python interpreter has two major parts, which is what? The translator and the virtual machine. Now, the parser and the compiler, these two of them are known as the translator. So this is just a very simple diagram that I'm showing you. A lot of activities are going on behind the scene, but just for you to understand how the flow is done. This component checks the Python code for syntax error. And if the code is syntactically correct, it generates an intermediate representation known as bytecode, which is what we are seeing here. Now, the bytecode is a lower level representation of the Python code, which is a lower level of this code that we have written, and is platform independent. It doesn't matter whether you are writing it on Windows, or you're writing it on Mac, or you're writing it on Linux. It doesn't matter. Now, this step ensures that the code follows the rules of the Python language. Now, Python virtual machine, which is this second part. The Python virtual machine is responsible for executing the generated bytecode. It takes the platform-independent bytecode and converts it into a native binary code that the host system's processor can understand and execute. This allows Python to be a cross-platform language as long as there is a PVM available for the target platform. So you have the Python interpreter, and then who is going to interpret this Python language into byte code, and then the hardware will be able to execute. So that is what I want to show you. So let me just show you. I wrote a program just like this, and then I'm going to execute it, and then you will see the output. So this is what I wrote, similar to this, but I just changed it from 100 to 300, or I can just leave it at 100 for you to see. So I can just put this 100. Now, I'm still going to explain everything that is happening here, but I just want you to see how the interpreter is doing the job of converting this source code into the final output that you're looking at here. So this is the input, and then this is the output. So this is like the process. This process is actually much, but I'm just showing you this. So now we have our source code, which we have written. Now I'm going to save this source code on my desktop. So I'm going to save it, save as. So I'm just going to name it first program. So that is it. I'm just going to name it that way. Then I will say .py, first program.py. So I'm going to save it on my desktop, which is this desktop. So I will save it. Now it is saved. So I can close this. So all I need to do now, I'm going to use my command prompt to execute this. I will type cmd and then I'll click OK. Here, I'm just going to type that program. So before I do that, I'm going to change my directory to my desktop. I am not presently in the desktop. So I'm going to change to that room called desktop. So I'm going to say C, change directory to desktop. Now, this is not Python. This is me working on my operating system. So I'm just like changing my room. I save that folder. I save it in, maybe let's assume I did my job, then I save it in the parlor. So, and I am presently inside the bedroom. So I need to come out and execute what I kept in the parlor. So I have to move out from from the bedroom to the parlor. That's what I want to do. So my desktop is, I'm assuming the desktop to be the parlor. So I'm now changing from this initial folder that I was in. I'm moving into the desktop because that is where I have that program that I just saved now. So now I have now moved to desktop. So you can see initially it ended with this John, and then you have this prompt. So now I have moved from John to desktop. So here I'm going to execute that program. So it was first program, right? First program. So first program, this was the name I gave to it. Then I'm just going to execute it. So you see, it executed that code. My first program, that's what is inside. Total equals to 500. Now when you look at this, you can see. So this is what happened. This first program, I created a folder like this, and I wrote this inside. And then I asked it to give me the total, which is, the first one was print out my first program, which it did, my first program. As you can see, my first program. It printed it out. Then total equals 500, total equals 500. So that is the instruction that I gave. So I wrote this, and then I save it with the .py extension, which is the Python extension. So the system automatically knows that it's going to use the Python word to explain that, because once it sees that .py, it knows that this is Python. So it's going to call the Python interpreter to go in and interpret what I have written. Now the Python interpreter comes in, looks at the inside of the code, check the syntax, everything is fine, then executed it, and ask the operating system to now release it again to me on the screen, on my computer screen. So that is what has just happened. So my first program has been executed. That is the first line. So if there was any error, it will show me. Now there is no error. My program is running fine. My first program, total equals to 500. It did the calculation. So that is what I want to show you in this class. Now after this, in the next class, we can now go into Python proper, and I will explain everything that I use in that source code. This is a function. These are parameters that are supplied to the function. These are variables, and then I'm putting a value into the variables. I'm going to explain this. So that is the whole purpose of this Python. So I just executed this on this platform. In the next lecture, I'm not going to use this, my command prompt anymore. I'm going to use the PyCharm to do the training properly. So till then, see you in the next class.